Welcome on in, everyone, to another episode of Let's Talk Utes. Today we are previewing the Holy War versus BYU. Ranked on ranked matchup. Utah ranked number 23 in the AP poll, BYU at 15. Let's start with Utah's offense versus BYU's defense. Let's just jump right into it. Landon, what are your thoughts on this matchup initially?
The very first thing I go to immediately is BYU going to be able to stop the run? I think that's going to be a foundational thing to look at going into this game. Obviously, Utah with a very elite offensive line, elite running quarterback, good group of running backs as well. I think a lot of this matchup is going to be played on the ground, especially on Utah's side of the ball. I think there's a pretty good chance BYU can't stop the run. This Utah team just barely ran rampant over Arizona State, who was one of the conference's best rushing defenses, significantly better than BYU's, at least statistically, and just from the eye test. But I do think that Utah is going to be able to run on BYU. That's the first place I'm looking.
I totally agree, especially with, the defensive line not really being up to snuff for BYU this year and the injuries to their linebacker unit, especially Glasgow and Kelly, probably both not at 100% for this matchup. I think Utah's going to be able to run just like you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, I think like a big factor is like we'll be able Devin Dampier be able to create some more yards with his arm as well, because I mean, setting up the run is going to be key. Obviously, that's like probably the main focus for Utah. But getting those chunk plays, like we saw a little bit against ASU. One play, something that we saw a lot more. That was a lot more prominent down at last year for Devin. I want to see a little bit more of that this coming this game, especially being able to take the top off of the Utah BYU's defense with some deep balls.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think they've been a little vulnerable to that. Their safety group is not the strongest group on their team for sure. So I do think keeping them honest with some shots over the top will really help. Something else that I've been thinking of is the QB run for Dampier. I think it's pretty unstoppable when he's healthy and it gets going, and it opens up everything else. I think that's something that Utah's going to lean on heavily. And I mean, this is the game to do it, It's a big one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you watch the Colorado BYU game, Colorado was just absolutely bullying them with the QB run for the first half before they inexplicably went away from it, stopped doing it, even though they were getting like 8 yards a carry. But they seriously were just QB running over and over with Caden Salter, just off tackle. They would do it 3 or 4 times in a row, and BYU's defense was really struggling to stop that. I think Utah's going to test that early, and if it's working, I think it's going to be a long night for BYU. I would not be shocked at all if Utah runs for 7 yards per carry in this matchup like they did against ASU.
Yes, something that to watch out for that BYU does a ton is they blitz their linebackers like crazy. Like pretty much any pressure down, like they're coming and they're going to want to, get deep in there. And so basically, like, you need to watch out for that. Maybe the quick stuff will help. The stuff over the middle, I think especially to maybe tight ends, Bentley could be good with, some of the linebacker injuries they have. I think this could be a big matchup for him.
Someone I really want to focus on is, we talked about him a lot in the ASU recap and probably a little bit of the preview. Daniel Bray. I mean, his explosiveness in the backfield, allowing him to create some open space. I mean, the dude is just electric. He breaks tackles like no one I've seen on the team so far this year, and his explosiveness and his elusiveness is top tier. I think he's going to play a big part. I mean, at the end of the ASU, like, we just need to get him the ball more. He's just dynamic. Whether that is getting him in the backfield, getting some screen passes, getting him an open field for shots down the field, any way we can. I think he needs to be a focal point for the offense. And Wayshawn Parker, the 1-2 running backs, they have to be more dynamic. Again, we've talked about it many times, but like Naquar Rogers, his carries need to be dispersed a little bit more to those 2 other guys. They're just a little bit more dynamic, and it's going to help Utah, especially, I wouldn't say expose, but go after those injured linebackers that BYU has.
Yeah, I think a key for me, BYU is going to have to stack the box to stop the run. I just don't see a world where if we're sending Daniel Bray across on that motion and it's that kind of that read option with the jet sweep handoff option, they can't stop that without stacking the box. And then that leads into the next thing I want to talk about this game. What can Utah get going in the explosive pass game? I don't think this is a game where Dampier is going to need to pass 40 times and, go 35 of 40, tons of mid like length passing. I think this is the type of game Utah's going to be running. If Dampier can hit 2 or 3 home run shots when BYU's forced to stack the box, I think that's going to be the backbreaker. So that's something I'm going to be looking out for.
Yeah, totally agree. Like, I think that this is probably a lower passing total overall for him than a typical game. I think that it's going to be really key to disperse the ball to those playmakers, especially Ryan Davis. I'm looking at him. He just has a knack for getting open, kind of like the back-breaking plays almost, where it's like 3rd and 8, and he just gets it for 10 yards, 9 yards, I really think that they're probably going to key on Davis, like the other people are important as well. What are we going to get from JJ Buchanan, Larry Simmons, Tobias Merriweather, other people at the wide receiver spot? I'd be looking for one of those people to emerge as well, maybe make a big play.
Yeah, I'd love to see like Ryan Davis's like yak after like numbers. Like I feel like he gets the ball and he's down. Like
Yeah.
which I love. I mean, it's one of those things where he's just he's a perfect slot guy. He gets open and he creates, like Lance Tanner said, those 3rd and 8s. Something that I want to see a lot though is I want to see how Larry Simons will play, because I feel like him and like JJ Buchanan especially, those are going to be 2 guys that I feel like are going to be like big focal points in the pass game, because I feel like those are probably the 1 and 2 guys at least I trust in getting open outside of maybe like a Davis and a Bentley. I think those are going to be a big factors for Utah if those guys can create some good space.
One thing I worry about as far as BYU's defense is they're basically built around taking away like the obvious thing, like 3rd downs, like they're trying to take away the sticks and they're like letting things go underneath or over the top. Utah, I kind of feel like is a team that like plays into that in a negative way, where we try to go for like those objective based things that BYU is going to be expecting. So I do think adding some unpredictability, like Landon said, with the explosive plays will be very helpful, because I do think that the reason their defense, kind of stays on schedule is because of, predicting exactly what they're going to do. Take the last drive of Arizona, for example, where they just ran up the middle twice in a row. BYU fully committed to stop that for 0 yards, and they did. If Arizona even went outside, if Rafita pulls that, it's probably a 20-yard run. They didn't have anybody to cover because they went all for the one thing. And so not being predictable, I think, is going to be key for Utah.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. One other point I want to touch on, BYU's defense will always lack athleticism and speed, just due to their recruiting profile, the type of guys they're able to get. I think that some of the stuff on the outside, Jackson Benny deep for some of those, as well as Daniel Bray and then Devin Dampier scramble, I think could hurt them a lot. Like an injured Jack Kelly is not the matchup you want against Dampier. Like he's going to get destroyed in the open field. Like that is already a linebacker who's not the most athletic. The speed's going to be too much, I think, for him to handle. So that's one thing I'd be looking at as well. Utah with some explosive runs, especially to the sidelines. I think that's going to be a big theme of this game as well.
Okay, anything else on the offense, or should we move to Utah's defense versus BYU's offense?
It's good to move
Okay, let's move over. Okay, Utah's defense has been really good this year. BYU's offense has been, I would say, suspect. I really think the only thing that they can reliably count on from their offense is LJ Martin. I think stopping LJ Martin needs to be priority number 1 for Utah, because if he doesn't get going and he's not effective, I don't know where they go from there. I think it's going to be tough for them to score.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. If Utah commits to stopping the run, I think they should start the game with the box stacked. If LJ Martin can't run, Bachmeier cannot throw you out of it in these long 3rd downs. He doesn't have the arm talent for that, and I don't believe they have the receivers for that either. Plus, Utah's secondary has been playing extremely well. A huge thing to watch, just like on Utah's offense, is going to be if BYU can run the ball.
Yeah, like Utah versus ASU kind of showed a way where BYU could probably exploit a little bit. They were able to create some good pressure up the middle with the DTs. That's something that Utah's defense is lacking. But I will say I feel like the John Hall and Landon Barton linebacker group is very experienced and well adjusted to stop that run and stepping up in the box and helping them there, and especially guys like Teo Johnson and Jackson Benny. Again, sure tacklers that will come down and really limit that run game. LJ Martin is definitely their offense. Like if they don't have, I will gladly take LJ Martin out of this game and have Bear Bachmeier beat us because I'm confident that Utah can withstand that Bachmeier passing attack pretty convincingly, especially with how well guys like Smith Snowden and Elijah Davis have been playing as of late, especially, and Blake Kahn. Can't forget how well he's played the last few weeks as well.
Yeah, I'm really not too worried about Bachmeier beating us with his arm. And so I think that's the way you go, like we've been mentioning, force Bear to throw. I don't see BYU being able to score a lot if they can't run effectively. And that includes Bachmeier. I mean, he scrambles, he has so many attempts, not that many yards production though. Something that I'm looking for that he likes to do is he likes to go, the defense when the pressure gets to him, which is frequently, he'll go straight up. Like he won't cut out to the side. He'll go straight up the pocket and directly kind of forward. So I would say something to focus on defense is don't get too deep. Like we saw this with Nico where we went too deep a few times and he just went straight up. That's something that I think Utah needs to be ready for.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to talk about as well. Bachmeier with 71 carries, 4 yards average, and his longest run is 16 yards this season. He's not a runner who breaks tackles whatsoever. He's kind of a runner where it's just like the opportunity's there, they're not really expecting it, or they'll just bring in an extra blocker, trust him kind of as a power runner. I don't think that's going to work against Utah. Like, truthfully, is this the best matchup for Lander Barton of any running QB?
I think so.
Someone who's
overall, this is a great matchup for Utah's defense.
Someone who's a bit slower, isn't really going to juke you, and then Lander can just use, his 6'5" frame and size just to completely take him down. Like, I don't like how the running is looking for Bear Bachmeier specifically. LJ Martin, maybe he's able to get something going. That depends, I think, a lot on their offensive line, but I struggle to see Bachmeier being able to run effectively in this game.
I mean, the best team they played, probably by far, is that Arizona game, and squeaking out in the double overtime victory is going to be difficult. I mean, they have not yet seen like an offensive line and a defensive scheme that is going to be anything remotely close to Utah, and they've struggled with teams that are probably just not on the same tier. Probably not. They just aren't in Colorado, West Virginia, and Arizona. I mean, Utah. They're just a different beast, especially on the defensive side, in the trenches. I'm intrigued to see how a team like BYU will be able to handle that, because again, like we said, we've been preaching since the beginning. It's LJ Martin or nothing, and if LJ Martin can't get started, this is going to be a very rough game for a BYU team.
Yeah, I mean, it's just hard to imagine BYU scoring like a ton on Utah. Like they couldn't even score 30 on Stanford, and Stanford is probably the worst P5 team in the country. Like, I don't know. Like none of their like offensive performances have really been convincing. They've struggled like even with bad defenses. So when they come into the best defense they'll play probably all year, but maybe Texas Tech may be better. But like at least the top one or two.
Yeah.
Like I think that's going to be completely different for them. Whereas Utah has already seen competition better than this level that BYU
significantly
will provide, where
better.
BYU hasn't seen that. Yeah. Like Utah will be ready for that. BYU, this is their first time like really stepping up.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what BYU's offensive line can do against Utah's defensive line, because I don't think they've played anyone with an acceptable pass rush yet. I saw some cracks specifically against Arizona where the line, they're not very big for BYU, and it feels like they allow pressure. And I'm just thinking Utah, with those better defensive ends especially, might be able to exploit that.
Mm-hmm.
Little revenge game for John Henry Daly as well, coming from BYU.
And Logan Fano.
And Logan Fano.
Like
both edges. It can be interesting. Again, like something that's super cool is like first time since 2009 that Utah and BYU both being ranked in the Holy War, which is exciting. I think it's going to be a hard fought, brutal game, but I do think like it's going to be a win for Utah pretty single-handedly. Personally.
Yeah, I definitely think the weakness BYU will look to exploit is maybe those defensive tackles, because like they are young, they are lighter, but then I mean you're running straight into the teeth of like our elite linebacker unit, probably best or second best in the Big 12.
Yeah, I mean if your main game plan is like interior run, like be my guest, Like I'm not afraid of
Yeah.
a team that their main game plan is the interior run. Utah's used
Yeah.
that scheme before, and I know it doesn't work from firsthand experience. So
Yeah.
like, it doesn't work.
Okay. Are we ready to move on to the key stats section?
Yeah.
Okay, for me, the key stat that I was looking at was, there's a lot of talk about how elite BYU's run defense was early in the season, but I think it's pretty obvious that it was just because they were playing pretty terrible
Yeah.
competition. Versus their two hardest games, Arizona and Colorado. Arizona averaged 5.0 yards per carry, and Colorado averaged 4.6 yards per carry. And I don't think either of those teams has a running game
No.
even comparable to Utah. It's like I think this game is there for the taking. Like I think Utah can push BYU around, and I think it could be a long day for the BYU defense.
Yeah, see, I didn't choose yards per carry or yards per rush because I think it's near a lock that Utah is going to be winning that battle, in my opinion. I actually chose yards per pass, and this is for both quarterbacks. If Bear Bachmeier has a really high yards per pass, that means they hit some crazy explosive plays. Like, even if he doesn't have that many pass attempts, and I didn't go total yards or anything either, I went yards per pass because if you're hitting the home runs, I think that's the main way BYU's offense could be effective. Utah stacking the box, stopping the run. They hit a couple home runs. That's how they score. Conversely, though, if Devin Dampier has a very high yards per pass, there's just no possible way, in my opinion, that Utah lost that game. If Dampier has a high yards per pass, it would not make sense to me. I think the game script for Dampier high yards per pass would be very similar to Arizona, which he had very high yards per pass in that last game. So that's a stat that I'm definitely focused on. That's kind of my padlock stat where if Dampier has above, say, like 10, 12 yards per pass, Utah won.
Yeah.
The stat I'm kind of looking for is honestly just carries. I just want to see a better disbursement to the elite guys at Utah in the backfield. Especially guys, again, Daniel Bray, someone we're going to talk about probably for the next 4 years for Utah. Just an absolute demon. I want to see him be able to kind of have a breakout game like he kind of did against ASU, and then Wayshawn Parker. I want those two to get the chunks of the carries, both 10 plus, and then and then if Devin Dampier, I mean, we talked about it at the beginning of the year. I want to see 10, 15, 14, 15 plus carries for him to kind of go out there and just kind of dominate. So I kind of just that's my stat I want to look at is just like who's getting the chunk of the carries for Utah, and how can we continue to get the elite playmakers the ball.
Let's talk about X factors for this game. Landon, do you have an X factor that you're kind of thinking of?
I have to go with the man, Devin Dampier. I think that he is the best player on offense for either team. And I think he's going to show that against BYU. I think his running specifically and hitting those deep shots, that's the X factor. I think it's very likely we look back at this game in a week's time from now and we're like, man, they just couldn't stop Devin running. Like, anytime they had a third down, he would just run for it. They couldn't get us off the field. So that's why Dampier's my X factor.
For me, the X factor is turnovers. I think that we've seen that a lot of these Utah versus BYU games have really been majorly affected by turnovers. Usually Utah running multiple pick sixes back to the end zone, or like fumbles or something. In two losses against BYU, the last two losses, no turnovers for Utah. And I think that has been a huge factor in why, they lost those really close games to like probably inferior BYU teams. So like I think that turnovers, making sure that you're not committing a ton and probably trying to get a few from BYU, that's something that I'm looking for as an X factor because I really think that's the only way BYU wins this game is turnovers.
For me, just my X factor is going to be is Jackson Benny. I feel like a second full game starting at safety. He's someone that is he's just looked like a natural out there. Again, I think his ability to affect a game on the offense and defensive side of the ball, I think he can play a big factor offensively if it's something we're looking for as a deep ball guy that I think Utah needs to have. And then on defense, he's just such a sure tackler, and his ability to go get interceptions as well is something that I think, like Tanner said, turnover is a big factor. He's going to be a guy that I will look for to be that. He's just always around the ball in a good way, and it's exciting to see So he's going to be my big X factor for this game, especially for Utah's defense.
One more additional X factor I want to talk about is special teams. I've never seen a team get more like random chance and luck on special teams than BYU just throughout the last couple seasons. Utah needs to stay clean and on schedule in special teams.
Yeah, I think that kind of leading into that as well, similar thing. There are two other aspects to this game that I think Utah needs to pay attention to, and that's one, the environment. Obviously it's going to be the best environment for BYU all year. It
Yeah.
always is for the Holy War. And then the second is honestly like officiating. Like you can't give the officials reason to pick on you, Like I think we've seen this where the Big 12 officials kind of heavily favor like teams that they think are going to do well. Like Utah got that at the beginning of last year when we were a favorite, and then Rising went down, totally flipped. I think that that's something to watch out for as well. Utah needs to play a clean game here. Take luck out of the equation if you can.
Yeah, I mean, you even saw that with the BYU Arizona game. Like it was a very poor officiating performance. Like there's a black and white like misapplied rule that probably won BYU the game. Like it's not just like a conspiracy theory. Like there's actual evidence that supports this and backs it up. So I completely agree with you. Teams that have better records in the Big 12, they typically are getting favored by the officials. I think it could potentially just be a conference strategy, boost up the better teams, get as many teams in the playoff as possible. But that's something for Utah to look out for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Tanner hit hammer on the head. It's going to be a hostile environment. I mean, going into LaVelle Edwards, anytime it's going to be tough. It's a loud plot spot, but especially during the Holy War, something that Utah's offensive line, if the only struggle I really noticed big time is that they do commit some some penalties. I mean, if that's something we can limit, the last few weeks have been solid, but that's something we struggled with throughout the season a little bit in the beginning. So I would love to see that trend of being positive on the the penalty marker, to continue.
Okay, should we get into predictions?
Let's do it.
I think that Utah is both the best offense and the best defense that BYU's played, and BYU is neither the best offense or defense that Utah's played. I think that this is a game where it won't be a total blowout because of the rivalry and being on the road, but it's one that Utah controls and that we'll look back on and be like, okay, yeah, like we were clearly the better team. I'm gonna go 35-17 for Utah. I think Utah's gonna punch in 5 touchdowns, and I think they're gonna hold BYU below 20. 35-17.
Yeah, my prediction, similar, I think, game flow to you. I've got 31-10 for Utah. I just don't really see how this BYU team scores outside of like defensive touchdowns or special teams touchdowns. And I'm baking one into that. I do believe there will be a punt return. So I don't think they score a touchdown on offense. I think it will be a field goal and a punt return will be how they score. But I just don't see BYU being able to really hang in this game. Like you said, they're not the best offense nor defense we've seen, in that you think Utah has the best offense and defense from both of these teams. I would go a step further. I think Utah's better at every position except maybe wide receiver. And it's not even that big of a separation. So I think Utah controls this game from start to finish. Good win for the Utes.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a Utah offense that's pretty good. I mean, obviously the Tech game is an outlier. Scoring 30 points every other game plus every other game for the season. I'm gonna go 45. 45-3. Just kidding.
I would
wish.
like that.
No, let's go. I'll go 45-17.
Okay.
I feel like Utah will be able to create a lot of just hard situations for BYU. A lot of third and longs, a lot of situations where they're just not going to be able to convert offensively, and then offensively for Utah. I think there's just not a world where they'll be able to be slowed down, especially with how effective David Dampier has been on the ground when he is 100% healthy, which he definitely is. And this is a game where Witt definitely wants to make a statement.